How do we solve the dynamic range problem of speakers? Carl in Chicago wants to know, and he writes to me, "Hey Paul, dynamic range dilemma for you. I mostly listen to classical music and have found that many recordings, especially of orchestral works, have sufficient dynamic range that I find myself turning up the volume to hear the quiet passages clearly. But if left at that level, then the loud passages become uncomfortably loud, louder than I find enjoyable. So I turn those passages down." Essentially, he's acting like a gain writing device. "I suppose this is an argument for dynamic range compression, but I think that, on balance, I prefer to adjust the volume manually, as long as I can do it using my remote while comfortably seated in my favorite listening chair, rather than having the recording engineer make a decision for me." Any thoughts? Yeah. Well, I think you're in line for a different system, because you should be able to enjoy the full dynamic range of both the loud and the soft. Now, yeah, I meant the soft and the loud. So my mouth was saying one thing and my brain was thinking something else, and my hands were gesticulating wildly. You see, I'm in the same situation. I turn the level up to where I can hear the smallest of details, but I gotta listen. I have to, so the room needs to be really quiet. That's another thing you can check too, by the way. How quiet is your room? But imagine yourself in a concert, and we're in some hall, and you're sitting, 20 rows back from the stage, and the orchestra is playing something like, well, one of my favorites, the Mahler Third or the Mahler Second. Now, this is a very dynamic piece of music, and in the Mahlers, you would miss half of the whole track if you couldn't hear those desperately quiet places. There's a guy way in the background, ding, hitting a little triangle, or an oboe, dum, da-dum, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And he's way far away if it's been recorded properly. And he's not close to a microphone, nor is he close to you. So he's way in the distance. And on my system, it's just, oh man, does that sound good. I can just hear him. He's like 30, 40 feet behind the loudspeakers. You listen and it's like, oh yeah, there it is. And then this bass drum comes in, ka-wham! And all hell breaks loose. And I mean, that's Mahler for you. That's the good stuff. Like the San Francisco Symphony, they with Tilson Thomas. You have to get that track. That should be your gold standard. Wherever you can find it, any number of places. Blue Coast Records, they have copies of it. There's who else does that? I don't know, just look it up. San Francisco Symphony Orchestra, Michael Tilson Thomas, recording the whole Mahler series, all his symphonies, and listen to the second and the third. Oh man, as dynamic as it gets. And the only reason I like it is because it is dynamic, because that's what the music is all about. So you should be able to turn that up in a very quiet room and have it be very, very quiet, but still hearable. So here's what I do. I turn the level up to where I want to hear the finale, not the finale, but the crescendos, the high dynamic range parts. There is a point where they get too loud, and they're too loud for the music or the room. You don't want to go that high. And every piece of music has a different setting that is proper, because that same sort of dynamic range and that same sort of loudness would hit you in the hall that was played in. So set it for as loud as you want, and then you should be able to hear those minor details that are so quiet. And if you can't, I would suspect there's something else going on that we should look at. And if you want to email me personally, tell me what kind of system you have, maybe we can work something out. It could be that your speakers don't have a high enough resolving power. It could be any number of things. But I would certainly not be an advocate of gain writing, and you shouldn't have to do what you're doing, because we never want to squash dynamic range. We want more. Okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow.